What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Football Corner Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremiah Queen. And of course, before we start today's episode, I would like for all my viewers out there on YouTube to subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening to me on a podcast app like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, please subscribe to the podcast. Let's cue it up. Thursday Night Football included the only two unanimous MVPs in NFL history, with that being Lamar Jackson and Tom Brady. So, with saying that, let's go to TNF recap. The Buccaneers took on the Baltimore Ravens at home, and the game ended up being 27-22, but it didn't feel as close as the score shows. The Baltimore Ravens, after falling down 10-3 at halftime, really ramped up and went back to what they do best. They ran the ball. They ended up running for over 200 rushing yards as a team. Lamar Jackson ended up throwing for over 200 yards passing. Had 38 pass attempts, which is not what the Baltimore Ravens do. But in the first half, they wanted to pick apart that secondary that missed a lot of key pieces for the Buccaneers, including Carlton Davis, Logan Ryan, and company. So that secondary was decimated. They kept trying to attack a rookie, and Lamar Jackson and Greg Roman, offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, he was like, "Well, if you're missing key pieces in your secondary, and you have a rookie guarding one of our best receivers, guess what? I'm gonna pick you apart." So they kept doing. Especially you could see that that the Buccaneers, they were giving a little cushion because they didn't want to get beat deep. They would say, "We're gonna take the underneath stuff." And that's what the Baltimore Ravens did. It was like, well, if you're going to keep giving us the underneath stuff, we're going to deke and dunk down the field. And they ended up doing that, and they only scored 3 points in the first half. They was in the red zone twice. They tried to go for on fourth down, which I didn't think was a good decision. Since the score was only 10-3, you take the points. But for some reason, head coaches now look at the analytics, and I didn't know half of these coaches were analysts. So seeing that the coaches are going for on a fourth down instead of taking the points, sometimes could bite you in the end, but unfortunately, in Baltimore's favor, John Harbaugh was not the loser of that. The Baltimore Ravens ended up outscoring the Buccaneers 24-12 in the second half. They went straight to the running game. I believe they had 6 straight running attempts on their first drive in the second half, and then they passed for a touchdown. The key pieces in that game, in my opinion, was Isaiah Likely. Isaiah Likely's a rookie tight end from Coastal Carolina. He had a really huge game, and a game that it really showed why they drafted him. And it really is just what we saw in the preseason. Isaiah Likely really showed a lot of potential in the preseason, but because they have Mark Andrews as their star tight end, he really doesn't get as many targets. But today, because Mark Andrews came out the game with a shoulder injury, he was able to capitalize off of that. And he had his first receiver touchdown, and even recovered an onside kick that the Buccaneers tried to attempt at in the fourth quarter, try to get the ball back. But so he had two of the biggest plays for the Baltimore Ravens. I thought Tom Brady and this Buccaneers team, they look horrible. They just don't look like the defense. Number one, let's talk about the defense. Their defense cannot stop the run, and their offense can't run. So that's like the biggest combination for a team. Right now, the Buccaneers are rushing the least amount of yards in NFL history, with only averaging roughly 64 yards a game, which is going to be, and through 8 games, I believe they only had like 50 rushing yards, roughly 50 rushing yards last night on TNF. So the Buccaneers are trying to rely on Tom Brady to will them to victory, and Tom Brady is just too much to overcome. Tom Brady has never faced this much adversity in his career, and it shows because it's the first time he's been 2 games under 500 in the history of him being in the league. So you talk about over 20 years, he's never been under 500. And with the Buccaneers dropping to 3-5, the Falcons can capitalize because the Falcons play the Carolina Panthers on Sunday. There have been a few trades that happened since the last time I did my episode for the podcast. And the players that got traded are the following. The first player was James Robinson, former running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars. According to Ian Rappaport, James Robinson was traded to the Jets for a conditional 6th-round pick. Now, this is coming because I believe, number one, the Jets lost their running back in Breece Hall due to a torn ACL, and they needed a running back to take his place. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars drafted a running back in the 2020 NFL Draft, named especially in the first round, and Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne has been explosive. He has averaged roughly 90 yards rushing, and is tied second in the league, averaging 6.2 yards a carry. So with that, though, Travis Etienne shows tremendous upside. Doug Peterson feels like he has more to the offense because of his explosiveness and the ability to catch at the backfield and break a 5-yard run can turn into a 40-plus yard run. And we saw that against the Giants. And don't get me wrong, James Robinson is a really good running back, but unfortunately, he's the type of running back that needs 25-plus carries in order for him to be the productive running back. Because he's a guy who's he's looking to run over somebody. He's not the speed guy. Yeah, he could break over for a long run, but he's going to get caught up from behind. And he has shown, even though he was the bright spark on a few bad Jaguars teams, but he never had that home run hitter speed. But it's a good pickup for the Jets. The Jets will use him most likely Sunday, and he's going to be very productive. The next player that got traded, according to Mike Garafolo, was Robert Quinn. Apparently, Robert Quinn, the former pass rusher for the Bears, has been traded to the Eagles for a 4th-round pick. The Eagles and Howie Roseman, the GM, are in win mode now. Definitely, the Eagles felt like they didn't get enough players on defense. But with that, if you are planning on competing, and you look at a couple of teams that went out to get players a few years ago, and especially a team that won the Super Bowl last year in the Rams, they got Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr. Those two pieces help capitalize a already star-studded team to the next level. And I think that's what the Eagles are doing. The Eagles are like, bump this. We are trying to win the Super Bowl this year. Let's go all in. And especially getting a veteran pass rusher like Robert Quinn, who last year had 18.5 sacks. This is going to be proven to be one of the sneaky best trades this season. And the final player that got traded on Thursday will be Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney is a former first-round pick wide receiver out of the 2020 NFL Draft. He was an electrifying receiver out of Florida. But unfortunately, due to some injuries, has missed a lot of games. And even including this season, he has been injured. There's been speculation that he's been injured due to a hamstring injury. Tom Pelissero has reported that he was traded to the Chiefs. So the former Giant wide receiver has been traded to the Chiefs for I believe it was like a 3rd round and a 6th round pick. And that's going to prove to be beneficial for the Chiefs because Andy Reid knows how to get the most out of players like Kadarius Toney. So when he's back healthy, he'll prove to be a star in that Kansas City Chiefs offense. So it's time for a segment I would like to call Contenders and Pretenders. So every year you have teams who are actually contending for a playoff spot, and then you have teams who look good, but they're really pretending. And the team that I feel like is actually contending will be the Minnesota Vikings. They are 5-1, and they're 2 games up on their division. Their division, the NFC North, is not the best division because of the way their competition has played. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers can't figure out what their team identity is, and it doesn't look like they can handle adversity. Plus, they got to play the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football, so that doesn't help them. The Bears look like they figure something out. When they play the Patriots, it looks like they're going to be just a run-heavy team and use Justin Fields in the run game and roll them out to be able to get the most out of Justin Fields in his second season. And the Lions are just hard garbage. They look good, but I feel like this is going to be like the last year for Dan Campbell. They're going to fire the head coach, probably get rid of the quarterback, and start get an offensive mind head coach for the Detroit Lions, and get a young quarterback in the draft. That's most likely what's going to happen for the Lions. But back to the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings have wonderful weapons of offense. I always thought that about this Minnesota Vikings team. Even last year, I thought they underachieved because they couldn't win in close ball games, and it wasn't always the quarterback's fault. It was a lot of things, including defense, which they had a defense head coach, so that should never have happened. And then they had kicking issues. Their field goal kicker cost them a couple games. Kirk Cousins is throwing at 66% completion percentage. He has 9 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Of course, you want the interception total to go down. He's up. He has roughly 1,500 passing yards. Plus, you have a running back who's averaging 75 yards a game, and you have arguably the best receiver in football, in Justin Jefferson. So this team's 5-1. They're most likely going to go up 3 games on their division. Those are my contenders. Now, the team that I think is pretending will be the Chargers. The Chargers are 4-3, and they're just rattled by too many injuries. And when I say pretender, it sounds like I'm saying just because they just suck. The Chargers don't necessarily suck, but all their star players are either on injury reserve or out for the season. Rashawn Slater, star tackle, injury reserve. Joey Bosa, injury reserve. J.C. Jackson, the big free agency signing cornerback, injury reserve, right? So this team, and even Mike Williams has been reported to be out for the next 4 weeks. This team is just can't catch a break. Their quarterback in the beginning of the season started dealing with bruised ribs, and this team, unfortunately, you still have to see the Chiefs. I think the Raiders' stock is going up. I think the Raiders have found their stride. I think they know what they have to do to win games with Josh Jacobs. I truly believe the Chargers are pretenders, and it's unfortunate because this team went all in free agency, and they had high expectations going into the season. Thanks for watching and listening to the Football Corner Podcast. Podcast episodes will be dropped on Mondays and Fridays, as well as YouTube videos on Mondays and Fridays. You could click the link in my description in order to follow the social media links to my podcast social media pages. And also, you'll be able to stay up to date on new drops, new takes, and all that good stuff. Thanks for watching. See you next time.